Hi, this is Shadman. Today, I wanted to talk about teenagers and screen time within the classroom setting. To discuss this topic, I will mainly be referring to my own experiences, especially my experiences during observation week when I observed a class of grade 7 and 8 students. If you have tutored high school students like I do, or if you have or currently volunteer in a classroom setting, you have probably seen this device. It is called a Chromebook. I have seen several Chromebooks in the class I observed during my observation week. Today, Chromebooks are used in the classroom for taking notes. In other words, in many classrooms, they have replaced written note taking for courses like history, geography, and language studies. Chromebooks are also used for making graphic organizers. One example would be a Canva presentation. In many classrooms, these virtual graphic organizers have replaced handmade posters made by glue, pencil, crayons, and markers. In many ways, this is a great advancement for learning. Typing out notes on a Google Doc not only saves paper but saves students from carrying separate spiral notebooks in their bags every day. Making Canva presentations saves students from carrying a poster board to school or spending money at Dollarama and Staples to collect appropriate supplies to make a poster. However, the drawback of using Chromebooks for note taking in the classroom and making graphic organizers during class activities is the amount of screen time students spend using the Chromebooks and the eventual eye strain that this screen time can lead to. In this presentation, I would like to share some reminders and tips for reducing screen time in the classroom. During my observation week, I have noticed students using their Chromebooks to make PowerPoint presentations on the ecosystem, complete activities on a novel read in class using an app called Book Creator, and complete a French test using Google Forms. However, one thing remained the same since I was in grade 7 and 8. Students were not allowed to use their Chromebooks when taking math notes unless they had an accommodation. It was nice to see that there was one subject in which students handwrote their notes, and this subject was math. with all the with all the numbers that students would be writing and all the shapes that students would be drawing, Chromebooks, in my opinion, would not make it easier, but would make it harder for students to take math notes and solve math problems. And for this reason, one suggestion I have for teachers is to ensure that all their students put away their Chromebooks when in math class, unless a student has an accommodation. The upcoming point does not exactly relate to screen time in the classroom, but since I am already talking about note-taking conventions in a math classroom, I also wanted to remind teachers that they should not allow students to take notes and solve math problems using a pen. Pen ink cannot be erased, and it would be frustrating both for a student to constantly cross out spaces underneath a math problem whenever making a mistake, and it would also be frustrating for a teacher to see so many crossed out spaces underneath a math problem. An interesting rule I discovered just earlier today when researching how teachers can help students reduce screen time is the 20 by 20 by 20 rule. The rule is that both students and teachers should take a 20-second break after every 20 minutes of screen time and look at something 20 feet away. I understand that this rule is very specific and may be difficult to follow at first. It may even take time to get used to following this rule. However, it should work well after a week of practice, and it will really benefit both a student and a teacher's eyes in the long run. For more information on this rule, please feel free to pause this video and follow the link in the bottom of this slide. The link will also be shared in the next slide, which has my bibliography. In conclusion, Chromebooks have made an excellent contribution to the classroom. They have optimized learning practices for students across all sorts of subjects. However, occasionally it would be a great idea to have students practice previous methods of learning. For example, instead of asking students to make another PowerPoint presentation for an upcoming assignment, perhaps students can pretend to be a teacher and teach and present to their peers on the blackboard while doing a timed presentation. Secondly, Chromebooks have made note-taking easier for all sorts of subjects, and currently there are probably apps, which I have not yet discovered, but I believe there are, that allow students to take math notes online. However, I think that math is that one subject for which students should not be using their Chromebooks for whether it be taking notes in a math class or solving a math problem. Based on my observations throughout observation week, teachers should ask students to put away their Chromebooks during math class. This way, students will be avoiding screen time for at least one of the 6 hours they spend learning inside a classroom every day. Finally, not just students, but teachers and anyone else watching this video should practice the 20 by 20 by 20 rule. In a technologically advancing world, none of us can completely avoid screen time. However, what we can do is we can make sure to take a break from screen time and observe our surroundings every 20 minutes. This rule really emphasizes the importance of ensuring that screen time does not replace other important aspects of our lives, like exercise, in person social interaction, and sleep. Following these methods and regulating screen time within the classroom will help teachers to help students to control screen time and ultimately keep their eyes healthy and take care of their mental health and well being. Thank you for listening to my presentation.